Hi there. Welcome to your Love Talk. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, please do so now. So today we have Erica Lamar, a two-time cancer survivor, entrepreneur, and podcast host with a powerful story of resilience, faith, and purpose. She's the creator and host of Embracing the Fight, a podcast dedicated to breaking the silence around physical and mental health. She's also the founder of Diversity Design LLC, where she helps small businesses develop strategies for launching and growing their companies. Listen to Erica's episode of Healing and Hope. Good morning, Erica. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And so I just recently met you. We are doing the seven-figure podcast training together, and you wanted to be on my podcast because we're doing similar things. So I thought it'd be really amazing just to have you here today to talk a little bit about your story.
Okay. And I thank you for having me because I found that it's, kind of difficult to find people to come on your podcast that are willing to truthfully, openly, candidly share their stories. And when you put it out there, I was like, you know what? I need to pay it forward.
Oh, wonderful. I can't wait to be on yours. I know it's coming up.
Okay.
So Erica, so you have a business that you just started called Diversity Design LLC. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, and then we can move into your podcast, Embracing the Fight.
Okay. So for the first time in 22 years since I graduated from college, I find myself self-employed. A lot of people like to start off by saying, oh, I'm unemployed, lost my job. I had to learn that I had to change my speech. So I became self-employed. And I started diversity design because I felt like there are a lot of people out there like me that said, you know what, I have a skill or I have a dream, I have a thought. I want to create this business, but I just don't know where to start. So basically, diversity design was designed to help small businesses grow. I also have Embracing the Fight, my podcast under diversity design.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the purpose of the podcast.
Okay. I started Embracing the Fight in January of 2023 because I found that it's very difficult for people to have issues and diseases and things that they want to talk about that they actually do talk about. So Embracing the Fight was created to help normalize the conversation surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. And I started the conversation off with talking about my journey through thyroid cancer. So this is the second time that I've actually had cancer. The first time I had a dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans, which is a soft tissue sarcoma. And it actually started in the epidermis and dermis of my skin on my left foot. And a lot of people say, how in the world does that happen? It only affects about 1% of the population. And I'm like, ooh, lucky me.
Wow.
So I didn't have anyone else in the family that had anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really, know who to talk to or anything. So at that point, I was like, 20, 26, 27 years old. So I was fairly young. And I was like, I don't want to lose my foot. I don't want to die. And I just happened to get a surgeon. His name was Dr. William Bruce. He was down in Mobile. And the reason I say his name is because he prayed with me before the surgery and told me that I would not lose my foot, that everything would be fine, and that I would probably outlive, anyone who told me that I wouldn't make it. So
Oh my gosh.
here I am, 20 years later. And now,
Sorry, were you told by another doctor that you would not make it?
well, I was told by another doctor that I would possibly lose my foot.
Ah, got it.
And I played tennis and I ran and I did volleyball. I love being outside. And I was like, well, people lose, body parts all the time. I guess it wouldn't be so bad. But then I was still consigned to the fact that I like having 2 feet, even though that's something that you can get past, but I prefer, to have 2 feet.
Yeah, wow. Wow. So then he did the surgery and then you were perfectly fine. So you didn't have to go through any kind of additional treatment.
No chemo, no radiation, nothing. Everything was fine. And then you fast forward to let's see how I can start off explaining this story, because it was odd how I found out that I had thyroid cancer. Yeah. So I went to my gynecologist in August of 2022. And when I came in, she was looking at me and she was like, and mind you, I had just met her because my previous gynecologist had moved out of state and I had no idea he was gone.
Okay.
And I looked on Google and I was like, oh, everything looks really good. She sounds, like she has great bedside manner and I just need a regular checkup.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in and she's looking at me all crazy and I'm like, well, hey, how you doing? And she was like, how long has your neck been like that? And I'm sitting here going, like what? And she was like, it's you got something really large going on there. I'm gonna send you to have an ultrasound, today. And she was like, has your primary physician ever said you had a problem with your thyroid? And I was like, no. They always say I need to lose weight. And she was like, well, your thyroid could have something to do with that. So went did the ultrasound. I didn't think anything else about it. That was on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
That Friday, she was calling me back, the doctor. And I was like, doctors don't normally call you. Why is she calling me? So she's calling and she's like, are you at home by yourself? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, sit down and I'm going to tell you, you're going to make it. You have nothing to worry about. But we did find a very large mass. It's about 6 centimeters and it's on your thyroid.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, a large number of masses that are found on your thyroid are benign. And I was like, okay, so this one's benign. I'm going about my business, be happy. And she was like, we're going to set you up to have an MRI with and without contrast as well. Yeah. Because I heard some swooshing sounds in my ears too. And she set me up with a neurologist. Mm-hmm. Well, after I went to the neurologist says, hey, you have blood clots on your brain. So I'm thinking, goodness, I'm falling apart. What is going on here? Okay. Right. So at this point, they've set up my surgery, for to have the thyroid removed. Initially, the endocrinologist that I was working with said, okay, we're just going to remove it. There was no talk of doing a biopsy or anything like that. So the first time I went to have surgery was the day after my birthday, and that was September the 27th. And we ended up not having surgery because a hurricane came through. Down here in Florida, hurricanes come through, they canceling,
very
the
often.
surgeries. Right. So they're canceling those surgeries that aren't, like critical at the time, that things that aren't life-saving. It's like, okay, we'll just reschedule it. Well, they rescheduled it to November. So when I was sitting there going, why in the world would they wait till November? So that's when I actually found out that I had the blood clots on my brain. I was getting the timeline out of order. So November the 4th was when I found that I had those blood clots. November the 8th is when I was supposed to have the surgery. When in November the 8th, with those documents, because I know that when you go to the doctor, those doctors don't share information. It's up to you to take this information and share it. So I got there, gave it to the nurse and told the nurse, hey, I got this information from my visit on the 4th, and they told me to bring it to surgery. And the nurse says, okay, you hold on to it, wait till the doctor comes in. Doctor comes in, I give it to her. She looks at it. She drops her hands. She looks at me and says, we can't do surgery today. And I'm like, really? Why not?
Why?
And she explained that because I had blood clots on my brain, that if she had started to do surgery, like when you administer anesthesia, it causes your blood to clot, and and it also causes your heart rate, to speed up. So imagine if that happened. She said I could have had a stroke, I could have had a heart attack, and I just would have died, and nobody would have known why.
Goodness.
So then she says, okay, I'm going to send you to a hematologist. So we're going to do a study, on your blood and find out, what's really going on. So I went to the hematologist. When I say they took so much blood, I didn't think I had any blood left. I was like, I think he took maybe 8 or 9 vials at one point, and then the next time I went, they took like 12. But either way, they found out that I have factor V Leiden, and what that is the property in your blood that causes your blood to have clots, or it causes it to clot. It'll do it more often than not. So now it's like, where did this come from? So after they did the study, it says that one of my parents has this. I'm like, well, which one? Talked to my mom, dad, neither one of them had been tested for, and they both had, issues, like high blood pressure, a little cholesterol here, a little cholesterol there. And I think my mom had had so many strokes. And my dad, he had bradycardia. So it was like, you don't know which one. And they were like, oh, we don't have to do a test like that because, we're up in age now. It's good that you know. And I was like, but they're saying it's hereditary. So that means your other kids and grandkids, they need to know. So I told them, well, fast forward, after all that was figured out, they put me on Eliquis. They said, okay, 48 hours before surgery, you have to stop taking it because you don't want to bleed out during the surgery. So when I get there and I tell the lady that the nurse asked me when I stopped taking it, I was like, well, they called me and told me instead of 48 hours to do 4 days.
Okay.
And she was like, oh no, we might not be able to do surgery now. This is in December at this point, December the 22nd. So they say, okay, they come in, they talk to me, my dad's sitting there, and they're like, well, you're basically in the same situation you were in before. We just don't know if you have a blood clot on your brain or not. If it's dissolved, there's a possibility that they could form. And if they do, then you could die, during the process. And I told my dad, I was like, you know what? I said, I can't worry about that because whether I'm on it or not on it, I have to trust God, in this process. Because either A, I'm gonna wake up or I'm not. And I said, Dad, if I don't wake up, just know that y'all have done above and beyond anything I could have ever asked for as parents. And I'm always gonna, love you, and I'll be looking down if the Lord allows. And I was like, but don't worry about it. I'm happy. Everything's good. And my dad's looking at me like, what? What are you talking about? You supposed to stay here and take care of me. So let me go get your mama. So he goes out and he gets mom. Mom comes and she sits in there and she's asking, well, what's going on? And I explained it to her too. And I said, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. She said, okay, well, I'm gonna go on out here and I'm gonna pray. I was expecting her to be more like how my dad was being, but mom was like, no, you'll be fine. She gets up, she goes out. I wake up, it's like maybe 6-7 hours later. And it's like, I don't feel any pain. It was weird. And I got my phone out and I started recording myself because I was like, hey, y'all, I made it through. Wow. And I just want you all to see, miracles, signs, and wonders in this day. And then I stopped it. So from that point, I was saying, you know what? I need to go ahead and tell my story. I started telling my story before. I recorded myself saying, this is what I'm about to do. This is about healing and being transparent because people go through all kinds of things in their life and they never speak on it. Yeah. I didn't know that I had several aunts and uncles that had different types of cancers because they just didn't talk about it. Right. And imagine if they had, then maybe we would have gotten screened, sooner for these things and could have potentially caught it. But in my case, I was going to the doctor. My primary doctor was just telling me, oh, there's nothing wrong. You just need to lose weight. And when the gynecologist saw all the records from that, she was like, you've had hypothyroidism for the past 5-6 years. And she was like, if you didn't switch doctors, if you didn't advocate for yourself, this thyroid cancer could have spread and gone everywhere. That mass, they initially thought it was 6 centimeters. The last measurement I saw was actually 9 in this space here. How can you have 9 centimeters in there? Wow. So now it's gone. But the last visit that I had, they told me that because they had to cut out the thyroid and they only have so much time because the amount of bleeding that you experience in that small space, it could, get into your lungs. All these different things could happen. So they have to get in, get out, just make sure they get that organ out. Well, when they did that, it's not a precision cut. It's not, oh yeah, we cleaned all of the thyroid off the vocal cords or the inner portion of the neck. They got out what they could get out. So now the numbers are starting to go back up. And my endocrinologist is trying to determine whether or not this is thyroid cancer or just the thyroid hormone that's coming out of the remaining portion of the thyroid that's there.
And how do they decide that?
How do they decide
if it's thyroid cancer or not?
So after I go back next week, they'll be able to see if the measures that she has put in place, the additional medication that I have to take on Wednesdays, if it suppresses it, then that means it's the thyroid itself But if
Okay.
it doesn't do anything at all and it's still, showing the way that it's been showing, or
Mhm.
if the numbers are going up, it's the cancer and it has moved to another part of my body. But the good thing about thyroid cancer is once it moves, it's still thyroid cancer. You can still, find it or treat it with radioactive iodine.
Okay. But so there's no additional surgery that you might need.
Well, at this point, she said no. But
Okay.
if they do a scan, because they were talking about doing a full body PET scan. She
Hmm.
said once they do another scan, of my neck to see if it's just concentrated there,
Yeah.
then there's a possibility that I could have to have surgery. But if they find out it's somewhere else, then they may re-administer the radioactive iodine.
Okay. Got it.
Mhm.
So, Erica, even as you're talking about this and even the potential that there might be still some issues of cancer in your body, you still have this incredible faith and this incredible calmness. Where does
Mhm.
that come from?
Well, that comes from God first, and then secondly, it comes from my parents because having faith in God, one, lets me know that no matter what happens on this side, I can live eternity with Him. So I shouldn't worry. I shouldn't be afraid. I shouldn't stress about all these things. But then I look at my parents and I see all the things that they've been through in their life. And I see two people that didn't go to college. They were happy, to get out of school because they had to, well, my dad more so than my mom had to work in the fields and had to do different things like that to, help bring money into the home. And with that, I saw them persevere. They purchased their own home. They don't owe anybody, anything.
Yeah.
And when they're sick, it's like they're there for each other. There is no struggle about, oh, how are we going to pay these medical bills? How are we going to do? No, they're just write a check. People don't even write checks anymore, really, but they still write these checks because they know these checks are good. And it's
Yeah.
like their strength, their perseverance, and the fact that I had actually got kind of sad one day. I was talking to my mom and, just talking about wills and trust and death just in general. And she told me, she said, it's okay when we leave to be sad. She was like, but I don't want you to lose yourself in your grief. You have to
Mm.
keep living. In order to honor us, you have to keep living. She's like, because if you die with us, then where does our legacy go? So
Oh.
I just can't be, I can't be sad now. Don't get me wrong now. I'm gonna boo-hoo and fall out probably, but I want to get up because I know that they will be fine
Hmm.
wherever, they end. Like I know when they go, they'll be with God. But I mean, whenever, however it is, or whenever it is that they end, I know that that's just the beginning for them as well.
Actually, Erica, I love that. And I love what your parents said because obviously you're going to grieve when you lose a loved one. That's just a very normal process that you have to go through emotionally,
Mhm,
mentally. But the fact that you still have to get up and you still have to live, right?
mhm,
Because if you do die, whether it's emotionally die, then the
yeah,
legacy that all the things that they've worked for
mhm,
would come to an end.
mhm,
And it's a great reminder that part of life, there's the time to be born,
mhm.
and you have to also live your life with purpose,
Right.
right? But also the end, we all have to leave this earth.
Mhm.
And we're praying that whatever we do in this life will continue on to the next generation.
That's right.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
And especially for those who are struggling with losing a loved one, because it is hard, just to have that type of mindset and that reminder will really help.
Mhm. And it's interesting that you say that because I actually did a podcast with a mother who lost her son.
Mm,
And her son was like a giving, kind person. He actually like served in the military, and she was thinking that she would lose him there
yeah.
because of all the things that were going on in the world and where he was. Well, he opened a shoe store and, in a community that was low income, and he
Mhm.
was giving shoes away to help, especially like these little kids and stuff that didn't
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
shoes and the proper things to wear to school. He was giving this stuff away.
Mhm.
And I'm not exactly sure when he stopped doing that, but he stopped doing that business. And he was out with someone he considered his friend, and that person killed him. And she said that it was like her heart leaving her body. And at first, she struggled because she was looking at like her husband and her daughter, and she saw, how it was truly affecting them, but she was being so strong. And she was like, I don't understand this. Why am I not, torn up? Why isn't this, doing me the way that it's doing them? Why is this affecting them this way? And she didn't understand it until her son collected these Star Wars memorabilia, these little figurines and all these paintings and different things like that. And he had a friend that loved them as well. So she called a friend and told him, hey, you could have this. Okay. And the father, her husband, had placed these figurines in different places in the house. And when he came home, he noticed, that some of them were gone. He was like, well, what happened to them? She said, oh, I gave them away. And he had a pure meltdown because he was like, I know that our son isn't here and he's not attached to these things, but you at least have to consider my feelings when you're going to give something away that belonged to him, that I hold dear to me. And she said it was at that moment that she realized that she couldn't think of anything that she could hold on to that was strong enough to bring him back to her. And that's like when she lost it. And then she ended up starting a group for mothers who are grieving, their children. And she's in, I think, Baton Rouge or Lafayette. She's in Louisiana. Okay. And she does it every year. And she says the crowd continues to grow. And it's sad that it's growing because mothers are losing their children. But she says so much grace and so much love and so much building happens, in those moments, that she realized that grief is a part of life, but you don't have to stay there. You can pass, on through it. And I was just sitting there going, lady, you are strong. I was like, I don't have any kids, but if I did, I couldn't imagine, saying goodbye to one of them.
Yeah, that's so special. And the fact that she started this particular program for other mothers, because oftentimes out of her pain, that's where passion, really lies. And it's amazing how her son now, because of what he's been through, the fact that he's no longer here has allowed her to be able to find passion through her pain and helping other women as well. So, Erica, how did you manage the mental health part of being diagnosed with cancer twice and just being able to stay with this positive mindset to get through the things that you had to go through?
Okay, so the first time I was 27 years old, and at that time, when you're in your 20s, you kind of think you're invincible, and they just like, whatever, it just kind of happens. And I had an amazing support system. Because the first time I had the cancer, my mom actually came and stayed like a month or two with me. So that was great. Had my mom around cooking, cleaning, but she didn't have to do a whole lot of cooking and cleaning. It was more cooking than anything because we didn't like to eat out. But just having her there to talk and say, this is how I'm feeling, about this. And she'd say, oh, that's normal. For instance, when I told her, what if I can't play tennis anymore? She said, that's a normal thought because your feet aren't necessarily the same. She was like, but if you put in the hard work and keep the same work ethic that you had before you actually found out you have cancer, I'm sure you'll be playing pretty soon.
I love your mother.
Yeah, look, me too. Because it's like any time that I thought any little negative thing started coming out, she's like, come with her broom, sweeping it out. Like, get out here. You do not belong here. And the second time I had cancer, it was a little different because my dad also had prostate cancer, like prior to that. So I really started to pray and ask God, what is it that you're trying to get our attention for? So because usually when things like that happen, I imagine that God is trying to bring us together. But then I would ask him, Lord, what is it that you want me to learn? What is it that you want me to show other people through this process? Because if I show that I'm just beat down and sad and depressed all the time, other people gonna be like, man, she's such a positive person, that cancer got her, and she just went straight down. Oh no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
The more positive you are, it's like the more endorphins and the happy hormones, come
Yes.
to your body, and they help in the healing process. So
It sure does.
the stuff that you can't change, I just don't worry about it. I just, hey, it is what it is, but I know who holds my future. So I just keep focused on that and keep going in that direction. That's how I dealt with that mentally. I did start to write,
Okay.
and I know when my friends see this, they're gonna be so tickled. I have been writing 2 or 3 books since the first time I had cancer, and I haven't completed them.
Oh, so you start the process in terms of your journey,
Mhm.
but you haven't, and then you stop the journey once. Is it after your cancer got better?
Oh no, it's not the journey. So the books that I'm writing have nothing to do with the cancer.
Okay.
So it's any emotion or any thought that I'm having at the time. Like, so I started writing this book about this little girl and what it was like to grow up in a family that is divided by race. And what happens when the person who's the pillar of your family, when they die. And here you are, this little kid looking, saying, this is my grandmother held us together. And now you're being taken away from everything that you know and love. So when I write those sorts of things, it's not, it's about what I'm thinking, about what I'm going through, but I manifest it into something else.
Okay.
So it's not my story, it's
Mhm.
a story, but it was brought on by the emotion that I was dealing with at the time.
Got it. So you have to get these books published.
I do. The interesting thing is I went on a cruise last week. No, the week before last, the 6th to the 13th. And one of my best friend's nieces was reading my book. And as she was reading it, she was looking at me. She was like, I hate you. And I was like, what did I do? And she's like, you got me crying in front of all these people.
Oh.
She was just like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I was like, well, I haven't finished. She was like, what? You haven't finished? Why not? She was like, you need to finish this. She was like, this right here. She said, I've never read anything like this to make me feel this way. And she was like, she was like, I don't even know how to describe the emotion that I'm feeling. I just feel overwhelmed. Like, I want to go hug my grandma. I want to hug my grandpa.
Oh.
I want to love on these people as much as I can. I said, well, if it makes you feel that way, then do it. I said, because
Mhm.
that's why I write the books the way that I write them, so that people feel those emotions and they take action. But then I have to reverse that and say that to myself because I stopped writing them.
Yeah, because if a family member is expressing those things to you, and how much it's touched her, then imagine how it can touch so many other people if you put it out there into the universe.
That's true.
So,
I just need to figure out how to do
okay, we'll have to talk about that.
that.
So you talked about lessons learned. What are
Mhm.
some of the lessons learned from your experiences?
That you absolutely have to advocate for yourself.
Mhm.
Just because, you go to the doctor and you're doing your routine tests or something, if something feels off,
Mhm.
don't just go with that one doctor. Because if I had, who knows, what my condition would be at this point. And also make sure that you ask questions about how much things will cost and if there are any subsidies or anything available that can help you. Because I found that like with the American Cancer Society, say for
Mhm.
instance, if my parents weren't such a great support system, I could call them up and say, hey, I don't have a way to get to my surgery and I don't have anywhere to stay near a hospital. Then they would send non emergency medical transport to pick me up, and they would have me placed in somewhere like a Hope House or somewhere near that
Mhm.
area. And then after I have surgery, they make sure that I was taken back to that Hope House so I'm not alone after surgery. So advocating for yourself, asking questions and seeing, what the next steps are the most important things that I
Mhm.
think, that I learned. Because one of the things that I shouldn't say didn't pay attention to, but I started paying more attention to after they told me that I had blood clots. They put a drain here. And there was nothing I could do like to clean the drain or anything like that. But it heightened my awareness of how bad the blood clots were actually, in my blood. Because before, when I was taking the Eliquis and they made me stop or whatever, I was like, because you can't see your blood, you don't know what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But once you look at this drain and you see these huge like clots coming through, blocking the drain, and the fluid won't flow and your neck starts to swell a little bit, I was enduring it more than I should have. So I ended up calling my doctor and saying, hey, I got these big lumps and things coming through. And they were like, oh, you need to get back on your Eliquis. Now is the time. So start back taking it. Everything's draining out and clear. And I had no idea what a blood clot actually looked like. So
Mm-hmm.
actually advocating for myself when I didn't think I needed to. That's something that we all need to do. If it comes into your mind, ask. Because if you don't, then you never know what can, come of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I also like the fact that you talked about when you're advocating, there are resources out there that you don't always know that's out there for you, and that they will send you someone that can be an aid for you, or they can put you in a facility that can, help prepare you just to be in a place that's comfortable before surgery or even after. So those are good points because people don't always know that.
Right.
That is wonderful. So, just in terms of moving forward with this particular podcast and the work that you're doing, what's
Mhm.
next for you?
Well, so I want to spend more time on the podcast with more guests.
Okay.
So I have been really beating the bushes trying to find guests. And I actually found I have to remember the name of it, but there's a group out there that will put together a group of podcast guests for you. You fill out this survey and then they send you back a spreadsheet with names on it. So I did it and I started, bringing people in
Yeah.
and doing these interviews, but I want to do more of that because I find that when I talk and it's just me, speaking on the podcast, people tell me, oh, you have so much wisdom. That is such good information. But there's only so much that I can talk about, for 52 weeks of the year. So I want it to grow. One,
Yeah.
two. Um, I have another book that I actually finished. It's an ebook that talks
Okay.
about knowing your health. And I haven't published it, but that's the next step because what I want to do is help our older Americans to make sure that they have all the information laid out. Because, like I said, earlier, that when you go from one doctor to the next, your information doesn't follow you
Yeah.
unless you're in the same network or same system. Like, say, for instance, Florida has Florida Medical and you have Advent Health. But if you go to Florida Medical, Advent Health doesn't have your information. So
Right.
I'm working on that as well. So I'm just
Okay.
trying to grow my brand.
Oh, and that's great. And I know it's going to grow. You've got a lot of things in the pipeline that just
Thank
needs
you.
to be out there. So I'm sure that's going to happen in the next little bit. But the importance of, advocating for yourself is just so clear. And in realizing, even in Virginia, there's different systems here, healthcare systems, and so they don't always talk to each other. And so being able to be aware of having your medical records and being able to take that and share it if you do switch over to a different medical system is really critical. Because it could be life or death. And the fact that you're able to find a provider that was able to identify the fact that something was not normal in your neck and to be able to say, you know what, follow up, because the other, obviously your primary care doctor missed that. Right. And so just being aware of finding the right person that is knowledgeable, because oftentimes, a lot of the doctors, they have so many patients that they are just moving so quickly that they don't always notice those things. So I'm glad that you're able to find someone. I truly believe that's also God that
Yep.
allowed you
Favor.
to have the other one leave and then you had to find somebody else, because I think it was orchestrated for you to be here to save your life.
Yep.
So
Truly
that's
favor.
just a miracle.
Mhm.
It's a miracle. So, Erica, where do people find you?
Where do people find me? So I'm everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook at Embracing the Fight. You can also find me there on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, but Instagram's a little different. It's Embracing the Fight _. And then on TikTok, it's also Embracing the Fight. But if you wanted to talk with me about improving your business, if you're a small business and you want to grow, just send me an email to operations@diversitydesigned.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erica, for being on the podcast today and sharing your story. It was so insightful and very impactful.
Thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica, for sharing your story of healing, strength, and resilience. Your life is a reminder that anything is possible when you release your fear and hold on to faith. I will leave you with 2 affirmations from my Love Talk affirmation card deck. The first is, I run toward my challenges to strengthen my inner being. And the second is, I am whole because my mind, body, and spirit are restored. And if you're listening to this podcast by audio only, you now can watch this podcast on YouTube by selecting @Your Love Talk. Thanks so much for your support. Please remember to visit yourlovetalk.com to purchase the Love Talk affirmation and couples card deck and my book, Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. To follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please visit Dr. Beverly Booth. If you have enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. This is Dr. Beverly from Your Love Talk. Blessings.